So if you're a leader today, I mean, you're basically operating under constant fire, right?
Yeah.
The whole business world is just this definition of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, all of it. And you're having to make these huge, ambiguous decisions almost, what, hourly? The cognitive load is just immense.
It's not just the volume, it's the stakes. And the networks that leaders have always relied on, their trusted human advisors, they're just structurally inadequate for this new pace.
Inadequate how? I mean, who doesn't trust their advisory network?
Oh, the trust is there. That's not the problem. It's access and perspective that are limited. Your traditional advisory network, whether it's a formal board or just, people you call, they suffer from three big constructs: scheduling conflicts, geography, and the really critical one, homogeneity of thought.
The echo chamber.
Exactly. If you're a CEO in finance, your board is probably full of other finance people, so you end up talking to people who see the world exactly like you do.
And that inability to get a truly different perspective, that's the choke point, which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We're exploring the future of personal counsel, specifically building a virtual personal board of directors using generative AI.
And our mission today is to give you the strategic framework for this kind of hybrid system. We're moving way beyond just asking ChatGPT a simple question. We're going to detail how you can intentionally blend the trust you get from human relationships with the incredible cognitive range of synthetic intelligence.
Yeah, this isn't just theory. We're going to show you how leaders are building these advisory boards that span, historical eras, different philosophies. Imagine consulting a virtual Steve Jobs persona who's just laser-focused on product vision, right next to a virtual Nelson Mandela who's grounding you in moral courage.
Okay, let's unpack this.
First things first, we have to understand the foundation we're building on. What exactly is a traditional personal board? How is it different from just, say, a mentor?
A personal board is a very intentional, curated network of trusted people who give you strategic counsel and really honest feedback outside your formal reporting structure. They're not mentors who focus on your development or sponsors who are there to advocate for you. They're external sounding boards. Their job is to challenge your assumptions. The real benefit is breadth of range of expertise, industry, and thinking styles.
That thinking style part is so critical because it's the hardest thing to find in your normal network. We're limited by who we know, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you can just call up Sun Tzu to talk about your market entry strategy.
Precisely. And that's where GenAI becomes so disruptive. These large language models let leaders simulate really high-fidelity conversations with these virtual personas. And what's so fascinating here isn't the tech itself, it's the introduction of what you could call synthetic diversity.
Synthetic diversity. Walk me through that. How is talking to a virtual persona different from, I don't know, just reading a book by that person?
It's the real-time interactive part. The LLM isn't just pulling up facts about Steve Jobs. It's taking all that training data, biographies, interviews, his actual decisions, and synthesizing a probable viewpoint in character for the specific problem you just gave it. These AI advisors are on demand, and they can embody viewpoints that are just completely unavailable in your immediate circle.
That makes sense. It's the difference between passively reading a history book and actively stress testing your strategy against that historical viewpoint. So who's actually using this stuff right now?
Well, the early adoption signals point to three main groups. First, you have solo practitioners, solopreneurs. They use it to compensate for being isolated, basically creating the sounding board that a big corporation would give them.
So they're overcoming network limits. The second group.
Senior executives. Often when they're in a career transition or even a crisis, they use these boards as a safe space to test really bold, maybe even politically risky ideas before they take them to their team.
For psychological safety.
Exactly. And the third group is innovation leaders. People in very dynamic fields who use these personas specifically to challenge the status quo, to surface ideas that a homogeneous team would just miss. So it serves this dual function. It's cognitive scaffolding, but it's also a psychologically safe sandbox.
And if we tie this to organizational success, the theory behind it is it's incredibly solid. I mean, all the research shows that teams with diverse mental models crush homogeneous groups on complex tasks.
And the virtual board basically extends that advantage to you, the individual leader. We're already seeing practitioner accounts with measurable benefits. For example, a big jump in decision quality. When you force yourself to process three totally different viewpoints, let's say a short-term finance guru, a long-term philosopher, and a high-risk tech visionary, your final decision is just so much more nuanced.
Especially for those tough trade-offs, like growth versus sustainability. It also seems incredibly powerful for blind spot identification. You can literally create a persona, a virtual contrarian, whose only job is to challenge your assumptions. It's like an internal red team with zero loyalty.
Right. It will surface risks that a human advisor might be too polite to bring up. And then there's strategic agility. The on-demand nature of it means you can run through 10 different scenarios for an acquisition before you even schedule the first real meeting.
You can see this tension in classic business cases. Think about PepsiCo under Indra Nooyi with her performance with purpose strategy. She was constantly trying to balance what investors wanted now with long-term sustainability. A leader today could use virtual personas to simulate those arguments. A Wall Street analyst versus a climate advocate, and find the synthesis.
Or look at IBM's Arvind Krishna managing the massive shift to hybrid cloud. That's not just a technical problem. You have to synthesize viewpoints from architects, change managers, ethicists. A virtual board lets a leader absorb and process those competing demands almost instantly.
But let's bring back to the individual. Beyond just business outcomes, what does this do for you? I think this gets at the core of developing adaptive leadership.
Absolutely. Adaptive leadership is all about your capacity for reflection, the ability to step back and look at your own motives. A virtual board turns what is usually just solitary worrying into a structured dialogic inquiry. Engaging a virtual Buddha persona about ego or a virtual Mandela about your core values. That enhances what psychologists call metacognition.
So it makes you better at analyzing how you're thinking, not just what you're thinking.
Precisely. And that brings us back to psychological safety. Executives self-censor all the time. They won't propose a really radical idea because they're worried about looking naive or spending political capital. The AI persona eliminates that risk. You can try out the craziest, riskiest idea with zero consequences.
That's a huge psychological benefit. It's not just refining the strategy, it's rehearsing the courage to deliver it, like how Unilever's former CEO Paul Polman would rehearse his big, values-driven speeches. A virtual board lets you practice that, fail, and refine, all in private.
So we've established the why. Now let's get into the how. If you want to build one of these today, where do you start? And step one is absolutely critical. Intentional persona selection.
It can't just be random. You have to align who you pick with your own developmental needs.
Right.
The key is balance. You need a configuration that balances, 3 dimensions? Functional expertise like strategy. Think of style visionary or analytical, and values orientation.
Exactly. And to do that, you need a quick, honest self-assessment. Ask yourself, where do I systematically fail? Do I have execution gaps? Am I always choosing short-term wins over long-term ethics?
Okay, so if I'm an operations CEO, super focused on efficiency, I need to find complementary strengths. I should probably include virtual visionaries, a V Jobs, a V Musk to challenge my incrementalism. And maybe I need a master storyteller, like a V Oprah, to help me translate my plans into a compelling narrative.
That's the intentionality we're talking about. A few key practices here. Limit the size at first, maybe 3 to 5, to avoid getting overwhelmed. Define their roles really clearly. V Sun Tzu is only for competitive dynamics. And always, always include a constructive contrarian whose values are different from yours. Then you can rotate them based on the context.
Which brings us to step 2, maybe the most actionable part. Structured engagement protocols. We have to be really clear here. The quality of the advice you get is 100% dependent on the quality of your prompt. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Generic questions get you superficial answers. You have to get into advanced prompt engineering. You frame the question with a detailed context. I'm deciding whether to acquire company X or build capability Y. X solves our distribution problem but creates cultural debt. Y is slower but aligns with our R&D. You lay it all out.
And then you assign the personas to specific tasks. So with that acquisition decision, I could ask, V Sun Tzu, what's the competitive dynamic here? Focusing on how a competitor might exploit that cultural debt.
That's a great start. But you can't stop there. You have to use multi-turn dialogue to go deeper. After Sun Tzu answers, you probe. What assumptions about our market position does that recommendation rely on? Or, okay, if we do the acquisition, how would V. Mandela advise us to communicate this move to the employees of the company we're buying?
That structure of forcing different perspectives to synthesize. It's what great organizations do internally. Like P&G's Connect plus Develop strategy, they have specific evaluation criteria. You're basically just doing that in a direct consultation with your virtual board.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Step 3. Integrating virtual and human networks. This has to be a hybrid model. The virtual board isn't a replacement for your human advisors. It's a tool to sharpen your thinking before you talk to them.
So the virtual board is for divergent thinking. exploring all the options, getting that cognitive stretch, and you save your human board, your inner circle, for convergent decision-making, checking feasibility, political risk, and getting that real accountability.
That's the workflow. You use the virtual board for confidential exploration first. You work through the idea until it's mature. Then you bring those much more refined, well-thought-out considerations to your human advisors. Someone like the CEO of Goldman Sachs has to manage this incredibly complex ecosystem of stakeholders. You'd use AI to map that landscape before you ever engage your human advisors on the final political calculus.
That makes perfect sense. But let's go back to something you mentioned earlier. You said virtual boards have zero political friction. But isn't that also the danger? If I only test a risky idea with my AI, I might completely miss the real human resistance I'd face.
You're right. And that takes us directly to the risks.
Yeah.
Over-reliance is the big one. AI advice is missing some critical human elements: accountability, lived experience, and emotional resonance. A virtual persona can't offer you empathy when you're going through a real crisis.
So the guardrails have to be absolute. You have to maintain critical discernment and, above all, what you could call human primacy. You use the board as a thought partner, not as a delegate.
Right.
The final decision, the final accountability, that has to stay with you.
Exactly. And you can use established frameworks for this. Look at the J&J Credo, which outlines how they prioritize stakeholders. Leaders should create similar principles for their AI use, ensuring the technology serves human values. If an AI recommendation clashes with your values, you override it. Period. The tool serves the leader, not the other way around.
And if we look at the big picture here, the goal isn't just better decisions. It's about building deeper leadership capacity. The AI should be a catalyst for wisdom, not the source of it.
100%. When your virtual Buddha persona brings up questions about ego, that shouldn't be the end of it. That should be the prompt that sends you to read the primary texts or to deepen your own reflective practices. I mean, Patagonia's commitment to the environment comes from deep philosophical reflection, not a quick consultation. You use the virtual board to stress test the implementation, but the core choice is grounded in deep human study.
So, to summarize the core message for everyone listening, GenAI personal boards can solve the limitations of availability, network, and homogeneity. They give you diverse, scalable cognitive input on demand. The future of leadership development is really, it's hybrid and it's adaptive.
The invitation is clear. You don't have to navigate all this complexity alone. By thoughtfully building these hybrid ecosystems, blending your trusted human team with AI-enabled cognitive diversity, you can radically improve your decision quality and develop the metacognitive capacity you need to lead.
We've talked a lot about how leaders can use GenAI to simulate stakeholder perspectives. But here's a final thought. What happens to the power dynamic inside a company when a leader knows they can consult a virtual contrarian on demand, completely outside the human hierarchy? How might the knowledge of a leader's AI inner circle subtly change the advice their human team is willing to offer? That's something for you to mull over.